All right. Here we are, ready to go.
Well, then I better get on there.
Well, if you want to participate. Hey, Grumpy Owl, how you doing?
Well.
He has his sound on, so he's going to turn that off. So we don't get the echoing. Rita says hello. Hi, Rita. It's a day. Ruth says hi all, and Dan says hi everybody. Hi guys. How's everybody doing this week? I injured my back. Gardening. Apparently. I don't know how, but I was standing and I was using the claw thing to get my soil ready for my sage that is ready to transplant, and I must have twisted or something and my back went and so I've been dealing with that. That's been fun. Rita says sorry to hear that. Yeah, me too. Erin says hi. Hi, Erin. It's always fun when all of a sudden you can't hardly move. Makes you appreciate being able-bodied. Ian says hi everyone, please feel welcome to participate.
I did say that.
You did say that. I see it right there. But yes, so ice packs, back belt, ginger walking kind of thing. Not bending over bad. Sheila says hello, all from Sheila H. Hope you're back as well soon. Yeah, it is better today than it was yesterday when it first started. And of course I kept going for a while because I didn't want to give in to it. You know how that goes. No, my back is fine.
No, that's a problem with my chat thing.
So, I don't know. So anyway, and then I've been having some other weird issues with my temperature. Actually called the doctor's office, went in for a blood test. They haven't called me back, so I don't know if they probably didn't find anything. It lasted for about 3 days and now it's back to normal, so baffled is me. I don't know what the heck is going on.
Well, I've got chat just shrunk up into a little screen. I can't expand it out or anything. So
you can't do the pop out?
No, I don't know why.
I can't help you. I'm terrible at that. Clayton says hi. Hi, Clayton. So, what do we want to talk about today? This will be a good distraction for me, so I can get involved in a nice, fun conversation with you guys and continue with my healing my back issue. Beth says, hello everyone, my first time here. Well, welcome, Beth. It's always fun to have new people. Any burning questions you have? Feel free. Julia says, woot, made it. Listens to the talk of the medical issues with concern. Yeah, I don't know, my temperature fluctuated from like 93 and a half to 98 in a 10-hour period. I was very confused and very concerned, and that lasted for about 3 days. So yeah, I'm thinking my thyroid maybe. I am on thyroid medication, but I'm hoping that the doctor's blood test shows something. Apparently not an emergency, or they would have called me back, I'm assuming. So I will find out tomorrow and let you all know. Deanna says, Merry meet, just got here, first time here. Another first timer, awesome. Welcome. Clayton says, can you tell me about your interactions with trees? Oh, I love my interactions with trees. I mean, the first interaction I had that I knew about as an adult sort of transformed my existence because I could actually feel the tree reaching out and trying to comfort me. I was going through a pretty rough time, leaving my husband at the time and being very confused about where life was going and what was happening, and feeling kind of depressed and like I didn't belong, like I used to a lot when I was a kid. And it's a very visceral experience that first time was just so enfolding and warm and loving and caring that it sort of startled me and shocked me out of how I was feeling, which is pretty significant when you're really in a state like that and you're that deep into it, to have something come along and just snap you completely in a different place. So that was when I realized that the trees and other forms of consciousness around the planet knew me, accepted me, loved me, and that helped me get out of the caring as much or being devastated by what people thought about me. Because ever since I was little, people have been afraid of me, which I've always never understood, because I've always had just a kind heart, and don't want to hurt anything. So that was quite hurtful and baffling to me as a child and as a young adult. So, but since then, if I need to get some information, I've been in situations where I'm in the woods and I feel like there's something going on up ahead, and I'd like to know what it is. Like when I helped with the healing of that large ley line down in Big Sur, and I can just ask a question and touch a tree and I'll get a response. It'll show me pictures or feelings or somehow give me that data. They're much more chatty than, say, rocks. Rocks will also give me information, but trees are much more chatterboxes when it comes to being able to sense things from them, for me at least. And so, if I need to get some information from the woods, then I can just ask a tree and generally get a response. And I've had some situations where, yeah, it was good to know what was happening. And I used to do a lot of meditation sitting at the base of a tree. I did like a year every day sitting at the base of this large cedar tree where I lived up north. And before that, when I was working in an office in a city, I would go to the local park on my lunch hour and sit under a tree with my back against the tree. So I was, tuning into that kind of energy already at that point. So I think it's really important to make a connection with the trees, and it helps with my wands. When I collect wood from trees, I can find out if they're okay with it, how much they want me to take, and so forth. Sometimes it's surprising how much they want me to take, and I'm like, are you sure? But yeah, and then that translates into being able to communicate with plants, other kinds of plants, and so forth, and sort of opens up your mind to the reality that human consciousness is only one form of consciousness and not the only form of consciousness on the planet, and helps get us out of our ego so much, that thing that we're so much more important than everything else in the universe kind of attitude that a fair number of people seem to have. So I find it humbling to be able to communicate with them, as well as comforting to know when I was going through really difficult times, I could always depend on them to be supportive and not judgy like the people. But yes, so that would be something about that. Grumpy Owl says, Tiger Balm may help. Oh, my back, yes. I've been doing ice right now, but Tiger Balm, I think I have some. It's a good idea. Beth says, I have better relationships with trees, especially ones in my everyday life, than most people. Well, yeah, because the environment, trees and animals and things like that don't come with a hidden agenda. They're not trying to get something out of you without letting you know what it is. So, you sort of see what you get what you see. It's kind of nature, even though it can sometimes, crush you literally, isn't out to get you on purpose. And it's not trying to trick you into being in the wrong place at the wrong time, so then it can, pull the rug out from under you. So I trust trees and animals, and I tend not to trust most people because they've proven themselves to not even know their own minds, so how can they tell me what they think, right? It's one of those things. So I think that a lot of pagans have better relationships with nature, which is why we decided to be pagans in the first place, So fifth born daughter says, new here, you came up when I was looking for information. The crystal ball I recently acquired. I've been watched several of your videos today. Well, welcome. We're having a bunch of new people. This is just terrific. So happy that you found us. And anything you want to ask about that is fine.
I don't think people realize that you can get actual information from trees. Like the pine tree that told me to take pine needle oil for my SADS, seasonal affective disorder. So sometimes the communication comes to a point more than just a feeling.
Oh, yeah.
You get actual information. Yeah.
Well, I've seen stuff happening elsewhere when I'm touching a tree. So there was a large earthquake in Afghanistan when I lived up north, and I kind of felt it happen, even though I was in northern British Columbia. It was like there was a shift of energy that seemed significant. 10,000 people died in an instant. So I'm assuming that was why. And it was the trees that told me what had happened. Because, yeah. And then, of course, it was later confirmed. That was also a night of a huge aurora display. One of the most intense I've ever witnessed, actually.
Of course,
started that night.
That implies that with that communication, the trees can't get through to most people, so you have to have clairvoyance and your clairsense is developed enough to receive that.
Yeah, you have to know your own mind well enough to be able to tell when something is trying to add something to it. Like, hey, there's this other thing here. So that helps. But yes, and trees are very healing and very helpful. They've been very helpful to me. So Julia says, totally agrees with pagans, better with nature, relationships, duh. Yeah. I mean, it's confusing being a person with all these different aspects to ourselves, and then being born wherever we are with whatever, mythologies or culture or stories that the people around us tell us are truth, which they may not be. It's there's a lot of stuff to kind of figure out and work through and decide what's your path and how do you feel about the world at large and people, and then you add your experiences with them, oftentimes not such positive experiences, but even people who have really positive experiences in childhood then often discover that when they go out into the world that not everyone is like the people that they knew. So there's disappointment, shock and dismay sometimes, like, what? How can that be? But that's one of the reasons, though. Clayton says, how can someone develop an ability to communicate with trees or nature? Be in it. It's the only way. There's no other way to learn and develop the ability to communicate with nature than to go outside
Also, you need to
and
have
be in nature.
friendly feelings towards them. The most effective things. Have friendly feelings towards whatever it is. When the pine tree communicated with me, I certainly wasn't attempting anything like that. But I was trying to feel in harmony with nature, and that's what I was doing at the time when that happened. So.
Yeah. And so, spending time with different trees, finding a tree that's near you that you can visit regularly, you develop an actual relationship with the individual tree spirit, and that can help you to develop the ability to communicate with more than just the one tree. But it's a good way to start, starting off with one tree that you interact with and sense and so forth. But yeah, you can't really get this from a book, and hearing it helps give you the idea of it, but it's the experience that gives you the ability. It's like you have to hone those abilities and open yourself up to them, and meditating and getting to know who you are is part of that process, knowing your own thoughts, your own feelings, and being able to recognize them for you. And once you have that down, then you can start to sense others, so then you can develop those clear abilities and communicate better. And it can become two-way pretty readily after that. So Lul says, hello. Hi, Lul. Welcome. Yeah, so in fact, that was a conversation this week, especially now with all the technology and everything and so forth that we have available. and so many shops and things like that selling stuff to witches. Particularly, it's become $1 billion a year or more business. So it's become quite a for-profit kind of endeavor. Not that I have a problem with people making a profit, but it has had the tendency to separate new witches who are trying to follow the path from the ways in which we, as older witches, developed these abilities, which was like being in it, being out in it, and trying to experience it, to understand our own neighborhoods and the cycles that are around us, and be able to read the streams of energy and figure out which way that energy was flowing, so that you could tell if you tapped into that, if it was going away in a direction that was helpful to you, then you could like go with it and add that to your working. Or if it was going in the wrong direction, you could step back and just take time out and wait until the time was right. But it takes time to do that. So Shay says, hello all, so sorry I'm missing the live stream today, crazy at work. Siofra, I hope your back heals quickly, and Ian, I hope your dentist was able to get you in. No.
Yeah, well,
he was not.
It'll be a couple of months, and they have to have me there before they can fix it, so.
Speaking, so those who don't know what that is about, Ian's lower false teeth plate just snapped in half. So we're now waiting for that. Things happen. Julia says, well, with the pine trees, I can't give them hugs, but I can lean my face into a branch and inhale their scent and let them sense my own. I mostly get feelings from trees, and mostly they are positive. I was once in a forest in Ontario. A vehicle I was in had broken down, and I was outside, and that's the only time I've experienced a hostile forest. They were very angry trees. And I was just like, I didn't do it. Please don't blame me. It wasn't me. It was someone else. But yes. Clayton says, thank you. You're welcome. Beth says, that's a hard question. I was just born with it, and they were afraid of me as well. He, snarking at myself. Yeah. It's a strange thing to me. I would expect the opposite reactions, like, oh wow, you have experiences that are different from mine, and what can I learn from you? But that's me. Sundrop says, hi Siofra and Ian, from your experience, is it true your magic won't work if you're in the broom closet and you're not in a magic community?
Absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
It absolutely will work.
Yes. I know being out of the broom closet is not a necessity for having your magic work. You can be in the closet and still be a magical person, finding your path and winding through and avoiding the dangers of people who might attack you because you're a witch. I mean, we had the dumbest thing happen here in our community. A person I know who's not a witch had a license plate that made her neighbors afraid because her license plate spelled elf and then 666. And her neighborhood had meetings. I mean, we're talking full-on meetings about this, about her being a worshiper of Satan and one of his minions and a danger to their community.
It was not a custom license plate.
No, it was just a regular one. It was just a random license plate for the state. And yeah, so they came to her house to confront her with it. So I appreciate when people feel they need to be in the broom closet. She wasn't in any kind of a closet. She wasn't a pagan. So yeah, it's fine. Joy says, super glue the teeth back together. That would completely destroy the relationship with the dentist and would make us have to buy our own teeth from then on. It's against the rules.
I had that with a partial plate, and I super glued it back together, and then that was the end of it. They basically were like, nope.
Can't see anymore. I'm sorry, you can't get any more teeth. That's it. So,
Yep.
So we
appreciate the suggestion, though.
Yeah. Super glue is one of his go-to places anyway, so yes, as a Mr. Fix-It kind of person. So Kev Bird has shown up and retracted his statement, so maybe he'll say hi again and let us know where he's at, or any questions he might have. So yeah, I mean, in a world where like you buy spells and or kits or what have you, you're not, a lot of people aren't spending the time to get acquainted with the ingredients, the energies of those substances, where they grow, what they mean in other cultures, whether they're right for the purposes that you have, because you're going to be doing magic. The more compatible you are with the energies of what you're using, the more powerful your magic will be, because your subconscious is very strong. And if you start throwing things in there that your subconscious goes like, what? I don't know, then it's going to weaken whatever you're up to. So, yeah, it is definitely a thing. Apparently that's why a lot of people are solitaires now, too. They've gotten away from being in groups, which I completely understand, because groups can be annoying because they have people in them who are like full of whatever they are inside their head.
Well, you just have to remember that with any group, there are people that are just people, and you always end up with some better ones and some worse ones, and that's just the way it goes.
Well, if not everyone's on the same page and not everyone is
Yeah.
committed to working through their issues, things will eventually dissolve.
It's really hard to find people on the same page, It's like
Yep.
it's like finding a good relationship can be difficult. So I guess that's something we just naturally have. So
Thank goodness.
as far as being on the same page magically, pretty much too.
Yeah,
Even though we follow slightly different interests.
right. But those are just superficial.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we follow different paths, but we have some different interests. But really, it's all the same path.
Okay, so Julia says, remembers this story and laughs and growls at it again. I prefer all the trees to most people. Very fundamentalist in the neighborhood. Yeah. Kev says, hi, I was wondering about your thoughts on the curse of Little Bastard. I've not heard of the curse of Little Bastard. Have you?
Well, I think that might be the one about the car that, what's his name? That's the only little bastard I can think of is the car that what's his name drove in the movies, who got killed.
Dean?
Yes, James Dean.
James Dean?
That's the only one I can think of. His car was called Little Bastard, I believe, and
Okay.
there was a thing about a curse on it. But I'm just assuming that's what. So they're
Yes.
just to verify.
It's
Yes, okay.
James Dean's car. I have no clue what to think of it. I think that people see curses in a lot of places that actually don't have curses, just because our brains work in an associative way. It's like we see 5 things and they all happen at the same time. We assume all 5 things are connected together, and then we start adding stuff to that. And then we end up trying to prove our own preconceived notion, whatever it might be. So I don't know. But I don't know that much about it.
Yeah, and that's not. Other than having heard that there was that it was rumored that it was cursed, I don't know anything more about it myself.
Well, it could be that, if that was the car he was in when he was killed, that his death, tragic and painful and sudden death, could affect the energy of the vehicle. I mean, I was at a place for a different, for a haunting situation that this guy had, and he was restoring old cars, and I wasn't there for the car, but there was a car in his driveway he was restoring, and I walked by it, and I suddenly saw the accident that happened with the car and the woman who was killed and all this other stuff, and there was definitely energy associated with that. So I wondered what would happen when he finished restoring the car, and if the people who got the car would feel weird. So I certainly think that imprinting is a real thing on objects. I've certainly encountered plenty of them for that. So Sundrop says, it seems to me if someone is a witch, I wouldn't bother them. I let them be, as long as they don't bother me. You would
You'd
think
yep.
that would make most sense, right? I mean, if you think they can do stuff that you don't understand, and then you set off to make them really mad at you, yeah, I would think it would be a bright idea to not piss off a witch. It's like silly people. Gav says, just curious because anyone that has touched that car has died. Well, I don't know. You probably know more about it than I do. Of course, everyone dies eventually. But, could be just the energy.
it's a curse of the mummy. It happened 80 years ago.
Yeah. Julia says, it's okay if people see curses where there are none, as long as they don't see mine coming for them. Ah. Hadi says, hi everyone. Hi, Hadi, if I'm saying that correctly. Welcome.
By the way, I wasn't making fun of the Egyptian curses. I believe very well that those Egyptian tombs and things may very well have had a curse on them.
Magic was one of their go-to places to try and keep their places safe, from people. And certainly thought forms can chase people around and be seen as all sorts of things. Clayton says, do you have to speak out loud to a tree to communicate with it, or can you just speak to it in thought? You can do it either way. I personally, for my style, the way I work, I almost always speak things out loud because the spoken word has got magic in it to start with. It coalesces a thought in my head or a feeling that I have, and then projects it and makes it more real.
Honestly, it depends on your comfort level. If you are uncomfortable with speaking out loud, it's fine to talk to it in your head, but I agree that doing it out loud makes it more manifestable as an actual thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when that thing happened with the tree in the backyard, when I was so upset, there was no one else in the backyard, so I talked to the tree out loud, didn't even think about it. It's just sort of automatic. And I do that with animals and plants, and I've had some encounters with animals in the zoos and things like that where I've done it out loud, and there have been a room full of like 30 or so people who have heard what I'm saying, and I wonder what they thought when the animal responded to me and, showed off when I asked it to. So you never know. But I'm apparently less self-conscious in general than the average person. I don't know if that's a character flaw, but it is definitely who I am.
It's not a character flaw, especially if you're aware of it.
So Hadi says, yes, that's correct. Kev says, thank you for the thinking. I will keep it in mind, but still spooks the hell out of me. Well, yeah, I mean, things that go bump in the night are kind of spooky. That's the thing. That's one of the reasons why, being a paranormal researcher and so forth, and trying to maintain a more open-minded attitude without the fear-based kind of thing to add into that helps me to figure out what's going on in a situation. I certainly would probably not touch his car. Not because I would think I would die, but because I would undoubtedly experience whatever it was that was there. I mean, I can't touch Tibetan crystals because someone asked me to read one once in a store that she had. And I saw some terrible things in that crystal that had to do with how they were taken out of the earth. And after seeing that, it's like, I don't want to touch another one because I'm not sure what I might see. So you have to monitor your input as well as possible. It's interesting anyway. Being someone who picks up on stuff sometimes. But yeah. But that's the thing, it's like, the universe is way more mysterious than we want to give it credit for, because we like to have answers, and it makes us feel more comfortable in our own skin if we think we know what's going on, when we probably don't. It's that being in that state of unknowingness is uncomfortable for most people.
The ignorance of bliss, or the bliss of ignorance.
I don't know. But, the idea that we can figure everything out is one of the places a lot of people like to go. And they want to have an answer, like, give us a solid answer. And in reality, things are in flux all the time. The universe is constantly transforming and changing all around us. So it's kind of hard to pin some of these things down. You can get sort of general notions, and then you have your own personal experience. If you're developing your own relationship with the universe, and the language you and the universe are going to use to communicate, paying attention is part of that process. And the universe picks up on what it is you're actually paying attention to, and then attempts to communicate with you using that particular mode, whatever it is. So it doesn't mean that that is the only mode or the correct mode. It just is the mode that works for you. There's so many different ways. The universe is very flexible when it comes to that. So Grumpy Al says there's a few cars in history that have been deemed cursed. The black Volga is the creepiest out there, although I think that is mostly a story, maybe a kernel of truth. I don't know. And there's certainly lots of haunted objects and stuff like that out there. Some of which I'm sure have been blown way out of proportion, and some of which are true. Unfortunately, don't have to deal with all of them. I have enough as it is in my life to figure out. Kev says, I've looked into the eyes of 7,500 dead people, and I know this is just the beginning of our journey, but the thought of inanimate objects controlling our path is just strange.
Well, there is no control. Inanimate objects may not control your path, but I'll let you continue with that. I mean, even if it's a curse, it doesn't control anything.
Well, no, you have free will to respond to it as you choose to. And, I mean, spells only work if the person who it's aimed at on some level agrees that it is something they deserve, I guess.
I might have
somehow.
have a little reservations about that statement myself.
But it's sort of hard to just sort of think that through in the moment. But, yeah. Inanimate objects aren't so much controlling you as they're giving you information that you can either ignore or take in. And, you know, the fact that I'm not going to touch another Tibetan crystal is not that the crystal is controlling my ability to read crystals or to touch crystals, but I'm like, I don't want to experience that again, so that's my choice.
And of course, not all crystals, I'm sure, are that way from Tibet.
But, right. I just don't want to take the chance because I'm very sensitive. Sometimes antique shops are really quite a mixed bag for me. Yeah. I never know what I'm going to come across in there and how well I'm feeling or strong I'm feeling. The thing is, when someone asks me to read something for them, I drop all of my barriers to read it. And that's how I can absorb stuff. But if I'm suspicious, then I'm going to be more cautious. So Clayton says, how would you describe or define magic after all your experience with it? It's being aware of the other levels of energy that are around us all the time, not just the physical reality that we are all agreed that we're a part of, and reading the streams of energy and being able to put out into the stream something that you want to attract to you or find out about, or it's hard to describe exactly, of course, because they're all just words. We are all magic. Everything is magic. Everything that exists is composed of matter that is magic, in my opinion. So it's a lack of separation that allows you to use it and to understand it well enough to be able to move with it. And it's not like getting whatever you want whenever you want it. That's not the whole point. It's about finding the best path of your energy amongst all the other energies that are out there that feels best for you. And sometimes you can influence other people or events, but most of the time you're using it, or I'm using it, to figure out, like, when should I do this piece of paperwork? Is this a good time for that? Or am I going to just hit a bunch of brick walls? Or, what are people going to be like when I go driving? Is this the wrong time to go? And what's the energy like out there? What do I need to be aware of? What warnings am I picking up on? What relationships do I want to encourage with the nature spirits and the animals? Like last night I reviewed our footage around our house because our light came on several times at night, and discovered that a cat in the backyard, a raccoon in the backyard, 2 deer in the front yard and another cat running up a tree like it was insanely scared of the deer. So, our house was sort of surrounded last night by different animal beings. And then I went and fed the crows before we came in here. So, inviting them to come into my space. So it's about learning how to control your own energy and your own space and setting boundaries as to what is permitted to come into your space and figuring out how to keep out what you don't want. And that's all part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a complicated question to answer with a short answer.
Yeah. Deania says, my eldest son was hit and killed in a car accident this past October 31st, 2022, while waiting to walk across the street to go to work. I drove past the accident twice, and I believe I saw his spirit. I'm so sorry for your loss. That must have been very difficult, and what a night to have it happen. No night would be good, but that would definitely be a significant night, it seems. And I have seen the spirits of people that have recently passed sometimes, on occasion, when I've been asked to keep track of them and so forth. Lewell says, Black Volga car curse, never heard of it. Elaborate, ? Deanna says, people around me tell me I'm crazy. Well, telling people that they're crazy is a good way to shut them down so they stop talking to you. And if what they're saying makes you uncomfortable, there you go. And it's frustrating, and it's inappropriate, really, when it comes to grief especially. And it's probably the most common time people have reported seeing a spirit is when someone that they know has died. And generally speaking, right after the incident or within a few days, when you look at the statistics. So I'm sorry that the people around you were stupid and said stupid things. Because, the spirit is a real thing, in my opinion. Grumpy Al says, there's videos about the Black Volga on YouTube here. Clayton says, I like that answer about magic. That's very helpful. You're welcome. Because it's so personal. I mean, really.
It is.
It's sort of intertwined with my identity and who I am and how I interact with the world. So yeah, it's hard to describe. So Grumpy says, too much to elaborate without writing an essay. So I guess that means go to YouTube and look it up if you want to know more. And Lewell says, you are not crazy. And I agree. Tracy says, are you familiar with the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren, and is what you and your husband do similar? Yes, I am familiar with their work, and the answer is no, it is not. Not similar at all. She saw demons everywhere she went. She was pretty much confrontational. Both of them were. I'm not. When I'm doing a paranormal investigation, I'm trying to find out what's going on, what the spirit, if it is a spirit, needs, if it's a being of a non-human nature, helping it get out of the environment where it doesn't belong, which is why there's a conflict between it and the humans that live there, and trying not to judge them for being good or evil. Human spirits are pretty simple when it comes, they're straightforward. They have some general needs that they are looking to have met. So, yeah, I mean, certainly I'm good at setting magical boundaries, and I have set one around our house so we don't have any human souls that might be wandering around come in to have a chat with me because I'm in one spot and they can see me well, because I need to sleep. My sleep is important to me. And they're not going to care because they're dead. It's not like it comes up in their mind. So, yeah. And I can tell generally the difference between a fear-generated thought form, an actual human soul that has stuck for one reason or another, which varies from I don't want to be dead and I refuse to accept it, to I really want to leave a message for my loved one, to I'm really mad no one has noticed me being here. I mean, there's a huge range of emotional responses from the human spirits that I've encountered. So yeah, nothing like the Warrens. Of course, I also don't believe in their pantheon with, demons and stuff running around trying to ruin everything for everybody. So I guess that would be a prejudice on my part or a bias, I guess. So I walk into a situation with a different attitude, so I get different results. And I think that's one of the key things when it comes to paranormal spirit activity. It's like the attitude and the energy of the person who is viewing the experience colors what comes back, because it's not solid like a chair. So, a chair is generally not going to change shape no matter what you think of it. You can think it's an ugly chair, a beautiful chair, a comfortable chair, an uncomfortable chair. It's not going to react. But if it was a spirit and you said, I think you're a horrible spirit, I hate you, I can't stand you, I think you're up to no good, if you said that to a person, how would they react? So I try to think about it from that level, is to being empathetic.
Yeah, absolutely. Treat everybody with respect, be it trees or
right.
Human spirits.
And then have good boundaries, so if they cross them, you can stop them in their tracks and say, nope, yep. That's far enough. I'm not dealing with that. No, thank you. So Joy says, I saw both my mom and dad in the house right after my dad died and was taken away. Mom came to get him. I saw that with my grandmother, and I didn't even know she was in the hospital. No one told me that she was in the hospital, and we weren't very close, so that was sort of a surprise. But I suddenly found myself in a hospital, in a dream state kind of thing, which didn't feel very dreamlike, which is usually an indication I'm not having an actual dream. And my grandmother was there, and my grandfather came to get her, and my grandfather was young and virile and all. My grandmother was so happy to see him, and then as I watched, she went from being an old woman to a younger woman, and then she went off with him. And I woke up from that dream, and I thought, my grandmother just passed, and then the phone rang. It was my sister to tell me that indeed my grandmother had just died. So, I know that can happen for sure, from my personal experience at any rate. Diana says, thank you so much. You're welcome. And thank you, Lul. Yeah. I mean, telling someone that they're crazy is not helpful in reality.
Not even if they are.
Yeah, even if they are, it's probably not helpful, yes. Joy says, what might happen to someone who is totally self-absorbed and inconsiderate of others if you put them in a mirror box? Well, not them exactly, physically, but Well, it's going to depend, because some people are so blind to their own stupidity that they could be in that box for years and never realize what was going on. But the stupider or the more self-absorbed they are, the faster whatever the natural consequences of that would be will come to them. It just may not come in the form that is satisfying to the person who put them in the box. It just really depends. The universe will figure it out and sort it all out. But there are some people that are so dead blind in their head. They are so self-absorbed, selfish, narcissistic, or sociopath, which don't care about anybody else but themselves anyway, that it's very difficult for them to get the message. It might be fun to watch, though. Yes. It might be. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, there are times when people actually transform, and this was another question that's come up recently, like, doesn't everyone deserve a second chance, was actually the question someone asked. And my answer is yes, but they have to show that they actually are earning a second chance. And you can't be given a second chance if you don't acknowledge what you did was wrong to start with. If you can't face it, if you can't face your own dark side or your mistakes or your stupidity or your rage or whatever it happens to be, then there's no way for you to change, because then it's not real. You're just giving lip service to the idea of change. Change requires self-reflection and truth. You have to be truthful with yourself. And I had this conversation with Ian not long ago too, and with my granddaughter, talking about when I was younger, I was a very abusive parent, in my opinion, and I was not happy with who I was and what I did. But I never pretended that it was okay what I did when I finally realized what I was doing. And I've always told my children that if they need to go into therapy with me and process it out, that I will be there and I will face the music. And so that is an indication of actual change. And yeah, it's sort of interesting subject for sure. And people will only change when they're ready to. You can't make them change from the outside. There's no way. It has to be internally generated.
Yeah, they have to want to change.
Yeah, they have
On
to
some
seriously
level,
want to change
yeah.
because it does take effort. And it's very uncomfortable to actually transform yourself to becoming a better person. I mean, if you need to become a better person, that means you're not as good a person as you would like to be, right? And yeah, it's complicated. Diana says, I like to think my son is with my father and stepmother who've passed. I can feel their presence, all three of them, at times when I feel the saddest late at night. Yeah, and I think often that they end up together in groups like that. And the human souls that I've helped cross over that have been stuck on this side, every single one of them had a different afterlife that I could see. That's how I knew that I had successfully opened up the portal between here and there. And I could see where they were going, and I could see the people they were expecting or the things they were expecting to have there. It's like they would show up. And it's fascinating to me that they were all different locations, different kinds of houses or environments or different kinds of beings, and interesting. Definitely. Julia says, at Diana, gives you gentle hugs to warm your heart and light your soul. Yes. And, I believe in reincarnation. I remembered several lifetimes when I was little, like 4. I remembered 2 different lives. I was born remembering them. And around age 4, I became conscious of the fact that I remembered these other lives and was kind of baffled by people who didn't know they had done that too. But, but yeah, the subject of saying things out loud, I had an encounter with a young boy. He was 5 years old. I'd never met him. This was the first time I met him. Walked into the room where he was. He looked at me. There was this instant recognition. He was very angry with me for something that had happened in a past life. He blamed me for. And I instantly could see it, and I knew what it was, and just started to talk to him about it and apologized. It was a fire that killed his parents in the other life, and he thought I should have saved them, and I said I tried, but I couldn't, and the fire was too hot. And that's another conversation. Like, I don't know what his mother in this life thought about that conversation, although she was sort of a pagan to start with. But yeah, when those things happen to me, it's like I'm in them. It's like, here's what's happening. And then he forgave me for what had happened, and then we were best friends. It was like quite remarkable and unexpected. And how can you plan for something like that? Just have to roll with it. Sundrop says, is my question blocked? Okay, I don't know.
Did you skip the...
Did I miss a question?
It seems to me it's not going to bother. No. Didn't come through. You're probably going to need to repeat it, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes the internet's not as cooperative as we would like it to be, so ask it again. Julia says...
I'm looking through and I don't see it.
Julia says, you are most welcome, dear. I have a grown son, too, and if anything ever happens to him, I'd hope for hugs and understanding as well. Yes.
So yeah, no, nothing got blocked, Sundrop. It just didn't come through at all for some reason.
So please ask again. And I guess we'll see if it's blocked. Rephrase it. I don't know.
No, it
because generally even...
No, if it's blocked, it asks me if I want to unblock it.
Right.
It didn't happen.
And he didn't block anything, so yeah, ask it again. Anyway, it's always interesting. Oh, Sundrop says, at Siofra, do spirits lie dormant? Okay. Sometimes spirits don't know that they're dead, if that's what you mean. I mean, and there was a spirit of a woman that died in a fire in like the 1950s that I encountered, and most paranormal investigators consider that like a residual haunting because in general you don't get a response from them. She was just sitting in the corner where she died from smoke inhalation waiting to be rescued. But I discovered that I could change my energy until I found a configuration of my own energy that she could sense, and then I could communicate with her. So that would be that. They could decide they don't want to incarnate for a long period of time, which would be one form of dormancy, I guess. So you could elaborate a little bit more on what you mean by lying dormant. And I can give you more.
I understand if somebody commits suicide that they won't regain consciousness on the other planes until after their time limit on Earth would have been up.
Right. That's one of the things that Barden says. And I did deal with a woman who committed suicide to help the police find her body, but she was definitely not dormant in that case. She was trying to get her body found, and when it was found, there was a sense of tremendous relief for me. I didn't even realize how intense it was until it was gone. It's always interesting when that happens. So yeah, I guess there's a possibility there. Sundrop says, Diana says, I was crying the other night and I felt someone unseen wrap their arms around me. It felt exactly like my son. Yeah. And they will come and try and comfort us. Sundrop says, I'm wondering if our house could have inactive spirits. Okay, yes. A lot of times people might have ghosts and not know it until they do a renovation. Renovations are the surest way to bring out any potential hauntings that have just been hanging out for a while and not interacting with the living. You start taking out a wall or chopping up a floor, renovating a part of the house. If you do have what has been inactive but there, you will become aware of them. That happened to my sister in Virginia. She's in a pre-Civil War farmhouse, and they had a ghost when they first moved in that she was aware of, a young girl who died of pneumonia, I think. She actually found her grave and stuff like that and confirmed her identity and everything that interacted with her right as soon as they moved in on Christmas Eve. But when she accidentally took out a wall of the house with a tractor because her foot got stuck, they suddenly discovered there were some other ghosts. And her husband finally saw them for the first time and was very upset and got chased down a hall by a very angry man who was like very annoyed by everything, which was a funny and hysterical encounter from what my sister said, because she'd been telling him for years that they had a ghost, and he comes out and is like all white. It's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I saw this thing. It was just me, like, and she's like, yeah, I know. I've been telling you this for years. So it's only real now that you've seen it? All the times before that I saw it, I was just, imagining things? She has quite the sense of humor. So I thoroughly enjoy my sister, that one. Bobby says, hello, Siofra. Hi, Bobby. Julia says, yes, I am sure it was him. All the hugs you ever shared would make it recognizable to you. Yep. Bobby says, hauntings? There are always strange bumps, sounds, and knocks on my bedroom wall just when I go to sleep. Once I sleep, it's gone. How strange. That's because you're unconscious and no longer aware of what's going on in your room. I have animals who are like scratching on the wall behind me, like last night with the raccoon and the cat. Sundrop says, we had our home reconstructed, but nothing happened. But before that, I hear things, but never saw anything. Well, and that's the thing, is like reading into some sounds, the things that wood does when it expands and contracts is just quite bizarre. So who knows for sure. Or maybe it was a nature spirit trying to get your attention, because they may not be a ghost. I mean, you can have things other than ghosts in a house, and they can be intermittent, especially if they're coming in from nature outside, and they just say, hey, hello, what's you up to, da-da-da-da-da. And every so often they get stuck. I've helped a few nature spirits escape from a house. This one young boy thought he had a monster under his bed, and no one told me about that until I went into his room when he wasn't there and looked under his bed and went like, what are you doing under here? It was a little gnome kind of spirit being there, and I'm like, you're not supposed to be under a bed. So I helped it get out of the house, and the first thing he did when he got home from school because he knew I'd been there, was check his room and tell his mother that the monster under his bed was gone, and I had made it go away. So, yeah, it's always interesting. Bobby says, do knocks on a wall count as sort of manifestation? Because what we have is constant, same time, hour, etc. It's not the foundations or the wind. Well, it can be. It can definitely be a manifestation. Yeah. And it's like, who knows for sure what they mean? Depends on your culture and maybe the time of night it happens. It could be a playful spirit that says, oh, this is fun. Everything's all nice and quiet now. Make a couple of knocks and everybody will go like, what's going on? Who knows? Carmen says, I've had a history of white, glowing, human-like figures showing up in my room and waking me up at night. I often pass out after seeing them, but should I try to communicate the next time this happens? Well, you might want to actually not encourage that kind of activity and set up a thing around your room that says, please don't bother me when I'm sleeping, and arrange a time during the day to see if you can interact with them. The reason that happens is because clairvoyants, sensitives, and so forth, we have a light that shines in the grayness of the spirit world. And spirit beings, either human spirits or other kinds of spirits, can see us better at night when we're not moving around and our light shows up, kind of like a lighthouse or a flashlight in the darkness. And that's one of the reasons they're attracted to us. But you have to set the rules as to whether it's okay to engage with you at a certain time. And if you want to, you can try and interact with them. But I think it'd be better to set, like a boundary and say, come here. During this time, I'm going to put this time aside for you to come and try and communicate with me and see if you can control the encounter a little bit more. Just because. Bobby says, Carmen, I use a petalite crystal. The high vibes makes go away ghosts, sort of. Yeah, I've been trying to talk or communicate with those spirits on the wall. Never got an answer, not even in dreams. Yeah, so who knows? You can tell them it's not okay to knock on your wall and see if they comply. Because you have the authority to do that. As a human being with a human spirit, you have the authority to set these rules and boundaries for spirits, no matter what they are. Clayton says, I had 2 scary experiences with ghosts when I was about 9 years old. I never knew what to make of it or whether it was even real or hallucination. I wonder why I saw that. Yeah, I had a lot of experiences when I was a kid, and some of them should have been scary but weren't, which is just weird. But I have that knack when weird things are happening to step out of myself and not react the way one would expect. Sundrop says, spirits don't care, they might scare people. Well, I mean, think about it. Okay, so if you're a spirit, you've been wandering around in this sort of gray fog for, I don't know, could be 20 years, could be 1,000 years, who knows. It could be any time because you don't have time. You missed your ride to go to the light to the other side. But you know what that light looks like. There's like an instant knowing of a human spirit of what that light is. And then all of a sudden you see something that looks like that light. It's like a moth to a flame. You're going to be drawn to it because you think maybe this is your way out. And then on the other end of it, you find a person. And you're like, oh, maybe this person can help me. But then they don't know who I am or what I'm doing or why I'm here. And it's not that they want to scare you necessarily, that kind of spirit. Nature spirits think we're funny when we're scared, so they don't mind. It's like we're entertainment. So not being scared is always good. They lose interest. But when it comes to that light energy, that's the reason why they come, and that's why they're attracted. So you have to find ways of dealing with it, creating magical boundaries that they cannot cross, and so forth. So Diana says, can my grief make my son's spirit not move on to where he's supposed to be? That can happen, but it's probably not likely at this point. Undoubtedly he crossed over and then came back to comfort you. Because they can come back after they go through their process. They don't have to stay on the other side. So unless you have some indication that he's restless and is unable to move on, I would just take his comfort as what it is meant to be, you know, to try and help you deal with the grief. Lewell says, I still have difficulty understanding where our abilities come from. Yeah, I know. But they do, and they are. And where they come from may not be as important as how to use them and how to deal with things. They just sort of, I think the Akashic part of our spirit has something to do with that. That being able to transform through time and space and not just be stuck in the physical reality.
No,
Beth says,
you can generate new abilities through effort and increase your abilities through effort. So it's not that they have to be passed on through a past life. You can certainly work on things through exercises, clairvoyance, and things like that.
I don't think that's what Lewell was talking about. Just where in general do we get these abilities? And I think having the fifth element helps us with that. Part of our human soul. But I don't know. Beth says, I had a horrible encounter in the house we moved in. It was never human. It never was human. My mother would act like it was a burglar. I faced it over years. Ever since then, spirits don't frighten me. I engaged to help. I felt so bad when I sold that house. It's still there. It came after me because I'm a sensitive. Well, you know, you can only do as much as you understand how to do. I've met ghosts before I got the ability to help them cross over. And, you know, there's one house up in Saskatchewan that is haunted, and apparently I'm the reason, or at least the neighbors would think I was, because I painted a Jewish star on the floor of the attic, and they can't make it go away. I don't know why. I just used ordinary white paint. But yeah, you do what you can when you learn how to do it. And that guy didn't cause us any trouble, but everyone else that moved in apparently was absolutely terrified and moved out within a month, from what the neighborhood said when I was back there years later. So how we respond to it can make a huge difference into what it feels like to other people. So good. Not being frightened is a good option. Vanessa V says, hello everyone, late but finally made it back to alive. Hi Vanessa V, welcome. Bobby says, yep, I have also asked them to stop knocking. I also projected light towards them to leave. Still there, but my dad passed away almost 3 years ago, and I still live in his apartment. Well, good luck trying to figure that out. I'm sure there's a solution of some kind, but not being there it's not always easy for me to be able to tell. Grumpy Al says, my son is mourning the loss of someone close to him. He's told me that he's been having night terrors with this person in it. It's bad enough he avoids sleeping until he ends up passing out. I'm sorry. He might be dealing with some of his own psychological trauma over the event too, which could be generating a lot of energy around that. Hopefully he's in a grief support group maybe that can help him have some emotional support from people who are going through something similar so he doesn't feel alone. Grumpy Al says, worries me because I don't think I would actually be that person visit him in dreams. You don't think that person would visit him in dreams. Again, it's one of those things. It's like you can't always tell for sure what's going on because we're such a mix. There could be grief and guilt and anxiety and fear and all sorts of stuff bundled up together. And it could be a projection and not the person. Or it could be the person. I don't know. We are complicated. Bobby says, well, I am alone in my apartment. My dad was with me in the last years in the same apartment. His ghost is perhaps here. Could be. Grumpy Al says he's had a shadow being run through him. Ew. Me imagining what it's like to have a shadow person walk through you. Ew. Bobby says, shadow? Yeah, I heard about the shadow people with dark hats. Beth says, I'm so sorry. Virtual hugs. I've met some shadow people that actually use the spirit of someone who committed suicide as kind of like a template form to inhabit. And when I ground out the shadow person, I found the human soul stuck underneath and crossed them over and got rid of both ends. And I have come across one shadow person that I just grounded, but it kept coming back because there was some attraction, I guess, between it and the person who kept seeing it. And it didn't have a human soul for me to get rid of or to help. Julia says maybe that person represented something to him that he needed in his life in some form. So the loss of the person, in addition to the usual grief, had some element of hardship that was important to him. And Beth says, that's so horrible. Yeah. Grief is a strange thing. Everybody reacts to it differently. And there's no right way or wrong way to do grief. It's just whatever you're feeling. That's why support groups can be helpful. They're generally not so judgy. There's a lot of people that just don't want to deal with the fact that people die and are going to die, and when someone they know loses someone that they care about, what they really want is for that person to stop being affected by the death. And they say stupid things like, well, it's been such a long time, don't you think it's time you got over it? Just like completely and totally unhelpful.
Not the thing to say.
No. And whenever somebody's talking about how they feel about something, dismissing their feelings and trying to make and minimize them is always the wrong response, in my opinion. Bobby says, I have an exorcism ability. I rarely use it. Grumpy Owl says, he dealt with it properly, though. He didn't give in to fear. The person he lost was a father figure, died from leukemia. Well, I'm glad that he dealt with it. Bobby says, Siofra, how can one stop being in fear frequency? Any exercises you recommend? Putting yourself in a position where you know that you're safe, and then trying to confront the fear that you have. Ian and I used to go, he was a spelunker when I met him, and I like spelunking too. And so we would go into these caves, and he would turn out the light in the cave. And he had a fear of the dark, and he wondered why he did that. And my opinion was basically, it was an enclosed space. He had a light he could turn on whenever he wanted to, which he did if he heard something, and make sure there wasn't anything else there with us. And it gave him an opportunity to sit in the fear in a safe place. So finding ways to do that, small ways, you start off small. And remember that it is a lizard brain response. We are prey, not just predator. So we have that kind of built-in biological reaction to things that we don't understand or can't see, or that are sudden because they could be dangerous. And fright is definitely one of the responses that will generate a flight response in order for us to get away. Or sometimes the freeze response where we just sort of stand there and don't do anything. I mean, fear can be a very powerful motivator to get things done when you need it, because it gives you that adrenaline rush and so forth to pump up your body system and so forth. So, yeah, you just find different methods for encountering it in environments. Right now, I'm mostly working with spirits during the day so that I don't have that particular anxiety response from like being vulnerable in my bed in the middle of the night kind of thing. So control the environment as much as you can. Joy says, I walked through a ghost once. He was trying to scare me, which made me angry. So I just walked past like if it were an annoying person, you'd shoulder bump him. I had one accidentally walk through me on her way to the portal I had opened and left a whole pile of impressions behind that came later in my sleep. I briefly thought there was another ghost in the hotel I was staying at, but I realized when I woke up that it was her memories, and that's how I got them. Beth says, now I'm an old gal, seen a lot, went through 7 days without sleep when my mother died. I gave her energy to live for 7 years so my grandson would remember her. That was my spiritual ego. I was wrong to do that, but after those 7 days, absolute mating and hypersensitive to everything, grieving so much, just know you're loved and supported. Well, yeah. Diana says, I've seen shadows in my home that run close to the floor like they're animal sized. I don't know how they've gotten in my home. Could they attach to me physically outside and get carried in? I see those too in my house, and I think that they're nature spirits. And sometimes one of my dead cats. Or a neighborhood cat. We had a neighborhood cat that we never knew become a ghost in our house briefly, to the point where it knocked stuff over. I chased this black cat through my house, and it was knocking stuff over, and I came flying out of my room chasing it, and my two cats were just quietly laying and having a nap on the couch and looked at me like, what you doing? So I tend to ignore them. Paying attention to them doesn't help, I don't think. I just notice that they're there, and I think a lot of times they're just energy forms and nature spirits that are just sort of wandering through. So that's what I do. Vanessa V says, what if the fear is towards abstract things? What can you confront it, like fear of uncertainty or of being pointless? Yeah, that one's more difficult because it's hard to set up a situation, but therapy can help with that. And then looking at deconstructing what it is that has given you that fear in the first place. Like, is this something a parent or someone else that you trusted said to you, a circumstance that created it? Challenging the assumption. If you don't know what your assumptions are about how the universe works, you can't challenge those assumptions to make sure that they actually are still valid. I went through a bunch of those where, I thought I was evil, or I infected people with violence, or everything bad that happened was my fault, Yeah, so those kind of core issues are generally, we got them as often a survival tactic or something we absorbed when we weren't very conscious of what was going on around us, like when we were children. And it just sort of sneaks in there and it becomes part of our makeup and part of our reality. So therapy helps with that one, I think. And like I said, deconstructing it and looking at what it is, where did it come from, why do you have it, and is it true? You just have to keep working with yourself. Life is pointless only if you decide that it's pointless. It's like the pointless forest. If you think that life is pointless, then you need to find a reason why life isn't pointless. You replace it. You can't just ignore it or reject it. You actually have to transform it into something else. And, look at that. Uncertainty is something we have to learn how to live with, because there's always going to be uncertainty. And getting comfortable with the idea we don't know everything and we can't control everything is a hard one for us to overcome, but you can do it. You just have to keep working with it.
I can control everything.
No.
I can overcome it.
Yeah. There is a fear of everything. I had that happen to me once where I got to see all of my fears. There's a fear of success that's matched to the fear of failure. Everything that you're afraid of, you're also usually afraid of its opposite. So if you're afraid of being pointless, then you're also afraid of being too important. That somehow you're failing in your life's goal to accomplish something. So, you look at the whole thing, we're somewhere in the middle in reality. So that's sort of helped work with the ego and try and get ourselves in a more sensible position. Bobby says, good question, Vanessa. Grumpy Al says, I get claustrophobic in pitch darkness. I panic, and it will feel like something is sucking the air out of my lungs. I think I may have been buried alive in one of my past lives. Oh yeah, I remember that one. I was in a cave and starved to death slowly in the dark. Julia says, ha ha, Siofra, you were herding ghost cats? Dang, that's such a funny visual. Yeah. Well, they weren't cooperating either. Grumpy says, I don't do good in sensory deprivation tanks. Beth says, Grumpy Owl, I love closed salt baths. I'm terrified of heights. I understand where you're coming from. I'm not that fond of heights myself, and I'm not worried about doing anything about that in this life. I'm like, that's fine. I'm just not going to go to any high spots where I have to freak out. When we did one of our caving trips, I was pretty sure I was never going to let go of this tree that had its roots in a rock over this cliff that I was holding on to. It's like, yeah, I'm not moving. That's it. But I did manage to leave, so.
Well, you kind of had to.
I know. It's like,
But,
necessity. Yeah. I didn't care for that situation at all. It was like a 45-degree hill with just grass and then the river 1,000 feet below. So it was very anxiety producing.
We did real spelunking, but just mostly in lava tubes except for a couple of caves.
Yeah, that was the Crystal Cave.
Yeah.
Stanislaus Crystal Cave. Vanessa V, yeah, I know that consciously, but the feeling hasn't gone away. I do have therapy, but I think I need to change it again. Thank you. Well, you can do magical operations to try and help encourage the parts that you want to keep. And like this would not be a bad one for the transformation, the cup transformation spell that we have as a video. And you can put that feeling into the cup, and you can do that every day, and then transform it into fearlessness or, whatever it is you think would make a good replacement for that feeling. And you just keep doing that over and over again, and that's a direct message to your subconscious. So that can be a very useful tool. I use that quite a bit on myself. Beth says, that's right. I have no plans of overcoming being afraid of heights, but I fly my dreams, so it balances out. I think I'm actually afraid of heights sometimes in my dreams when I'm flying too. It depends. There's this one that I have had from time to time where I'm on like a ski lift, and the ski lift doesn't stop. It just keeps getting higher and higher and higher until the earth is way, way, way small below me. And I don't care for that.
Quite the ski lift.
It is quite the ski lift. Apparently the highest ski lift in the world, some people got stuck on a couple weeks ago. There was like 40 people they had to rescue, and I'm like, I relate. But yeah. Sundrop says, if I can't take a spiritual bath, can I take a spiritual shower? Since we don't have a bathtub, we have walk-in showers. Yes.
Running water is great.
Running water, but what you can do is you can, like, the dollar store has these little baggies, gauze bags, whatever they're called. They're not gauze, but they're like a flimsy bag that you put gifts in for baby showers and stuff like that. I've used them a lot for rocks and herbs and stuff. So you can like pick up some of those, whatever color you want, and you can stick the plant material and maybe even a stone in it, and then you can tie that underneath the shower head so that the water will go through it. You charge it up and let it charge up the water as it's going through it, and then you do the visualization with the water as it's flowing over you, taking out whatever you don't want. So you visualize it coming off of you, going down the drain. So yes, you can take a cleansing shower if you don't have a bathtub. So Beth says, I'm with you on that. Vanessa V says, yes, I've used that ritual too since you recommended it. Started it again last week. The first time it worked, but the feelings come back. Well, that's why you have to do it more, frequently. Because you have to keep working with yourself. Lulu says, I often find myself in old Europe in my dreams. It seems so realistic. Yeah, and I have had a number of past lives that I remembered through the dream world, I guess. Kind of thing. So yeah, it certainly can be interesting. And it'll be fun when we go to the power spot, see how that works with us this time. That we're going to be heading out at the end of August, so we'll give you plenty of warning. But it's only 20 so days away now, 21 days. Because tomorrow's the 31st, and we're leaving on August 20th. So, Bobby says, I have put 3 times my comments. Was there something bad on what I have written for you not to answer? No, we did not see the comment, or it just didn't go through. because I've tried to answer every comment I saw. So if you have another comment, you can just put it up here.
Oh, yeah, the last one we've got in the list looks like he has an exorcism ability, rarely use it. No, how can one stop being fear frequency? Sorry.
Yeah, I answered that one.
Yeah. Looks like that was the last one, and then there's just, good question, Vanessa. Unless he's talking about comments in the comment section, on our live here.
Well, if you're talking about the live, it happens. If you're talking about the channel, I can't approve comments until they actually show up, and YouTube doesn't always put them up right away. But all comments on my channel have to be approved by me. So, Bobby says that. Grumpy Al says, I get to move, end of the month, yay. Julia says, comments have to be 200 characters or less. The bottom right under the entry line will show how many characters you've already used up. Vanessa V says, Bobby, perhaps the comment was too long. When they exceed a certain amount of words, they don't send. Yeah, we answered the fear frequency one.
Yeah, and sometimes
And I had nothing to say about the exorcism one, because that was a
sometimes it can
statement.
just take a couple days, since we don't live with Facebook online, sometimes it can just take a couple days to get to all different comments.
I check the
and things.
comments twice a day on our channel.
Do you? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I checked just before the live show, and there were no comments that I had to approve. So if there's anything out there, it hasn't come through yet. And since I'm not in charge of YouTube's algorithm, there's nothing I can do about it. Bobby says, no, about empaths. Do they use, like the non-empaths, the left brain or a reptilian brain? Okay, so that one we didn't see at all. I don't know the answer quite. Empaths, I mean, we all have the lizard brain and the reptilian brain, and empaths have more of a feel center, emotional connection with things, and that could actually be a reptilian thing, because animals communicate with each other without words all the time. So I don't know that that is actually a useful distinction to try and figure out. I'll give it some thought. But they generally think that empathy comes from like the left hemisphere or something like that, but who knows? I'm sure they're discovering more things about the brain all the time. And certainly sociopaths don't have that part active. They've known that now with MRIs and stuff like that. They can actually see which part of the brains are being used. And that part of the brain that they identify with empathy is almost dead in a sociopath or a psychopath. So they don't actually generate those feelings. But whether that relates to the lizard brain or not, because certainly sociopaths are very lizard-like, reptilian-ish, as far as it seemed cold and unfeeling, but that could be a projection on our part on lizards, and they may have lots of feelings, but we're just not aware of them. So I don't want to, diss the poor lizards too much.
And I haven't made mental contact with a lizard, so I couldn't say.
Beth says, did I miss a lot? I had to go to the bathroom break and feed for babies. Yeah, I found that weird, Bobby says, about the empaths. Sundrup says, what are your thoughts on cloned humans? Well, I don't think we've actually succeeded in doing one yet, but I would assume that if you have a body that's a human shape, that there would be a human-type spirit that would attach itself to it. I don't know that cloning a person is a good idea. It's a question for ethical scientists, I guess, to answer, because what are you going to end up with? And we know it doesn't happen like it does in the movies. You can't clone a person and make them full grown. They have to start off as a baby in a group of cells and grow up just like any other person. And why would they want to clone the person? Is because they were brilliant and they want to keep their intelligence and their gifts alive. But does that mean that our evolutionary processes would get stymied, or our evolution as a species or social structure or whatever would then be controlled by people who think a certain way? I mean, they're all good questions, but I don't have the answer to that. I'm certainly not wanting anyone to clone me. Bobby says, yeah, empaths are sponges. We cannot really shut ourselves up 100%. No, but you can control your reaction, and you can actually, make things go around you and not absorb. It takes just a lot of practice. Because I'm definitely a serious empath, but most of the time I can cope with people. Vanessa V says, I thought empaths are more sensitive to what happens inside our electromagnetic field. Well, our feelings, whatever they are, however they're generated. Joy says, an ethical scientist, is there such a thing? I do believe that they think they are. I don't know if it's true or not, but at least they are trying to stop other scientists from doing things just because they can. That's been a problem we've had as a species for a long time. Hey, we could do this. Is it a good idea? I don't know, but we can do it, so I think we should. It's like, and then it's like, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Too late now, we did it.
Like at one time, they thought they were going to set all the iron on the entire planet on fire all at once, simultaneously.
Right, that was the atomic bomb.
Yep.
And some of them really thought that might happen.
That would have been bad.
Well, we wouldn't be here to discuss it, so I guess we wouldn't know. There's always that, right? Another Earth went through that and we didn't. Yay us. Bobby says, that is true also, Vanessa. Well, I think that's how we generate thought forms and feelings and emotions and stuff, that they go through that kind of field. And yeah, I would think that would be the case. But everything is not completely straightforward, and everything is not just one answer for the same question. There could be lots of different ways of looking at things. It's one of the things I like about people. We look at things from a lot of different angles. Grumpy Al says, Operation Paperclip comes to mind with some scientists. Yeah, well, there's plenty of scientific endeavors that were highly questionable.
I don't remember which one that was. That's the problem. There have been so many of them.
That's the problem. There's been so many of them. But, they do have committees. How well committees work, I don't know, but... And Lewell says, there are ethical scientists. I am one. Well, thank you for speaking up. I thought there should be, because, personal ethics is something that everyone actually should aspire to have, but not everyone does. Bobby says, Siofra, do you do divination? And if so, did you try to find out how the rest of 2023 is going to be? Yes, I do divination, but not much anymore, and I don't look except for what's going to be affecting me personally, and sometimes I see larger pictures, but I know that I can't change them, so I don't say anything. Because I could be wrong. We're definitely in a weird crisis right now when it comes to everything about the planet and the heat of the ocean being 101 degrees, which is just insane. And I'm hoping that the other 8 billion people out there will get their act together and do something about it. It's one of those things. Grumpy Al says, like MK Ultra? Yep. Vanessa V says, yeah, there's both corruption and integrity in all fields of life. Yeah, absolutely.
If you watch the movie about MK Ultra, there's probably been several, but the one we watched, they said they figured what they could prove was about 10% of what they thought happened.
Yeah, but that was they had direct evidence for in that program. Sundrop says, you do rituals too? Yes, I do rituals. A lot of them are just short ones for myself at this point, but I've led large group rituals in the past, and when we have something we want to do, Ian and I do rituals together. Julia says, one thing that I wonder about is distance. How far something is away from you physically affect empathy and other things like magic workings? It depends on you. In reality, when it comes to cosmic reality or whatever, time is and distance, neither of which really exist. So you look at entanglement, it doesn't matter distance or time. One thing can affect the other directly. So the closer of a connection you have with a person, the easier it's going to be for you to sense or feel what's going on with them. That's one of the reasons why twins have such a strong connection, even twins that have been separated at birth, because they just have that entanglement kind of thing.
Through the Akaja, it doesn't,
Right.
distance doesn't really matter so much.
And
yeah.
so, part of it's going to depend upon your ability to focus and concentrate and stay on task. If your mind wanders, then you're not going to have as much of an effect. I've done some long distance stuff that's had tremendous effect on people, and some that hasn't. Depends on the connection I can get with them. So it varies, but yeah. And magic workings can have a wide range of effect. It's going to depend on how many other people are trying to stop it from happening, or who aren't on board for the results when it comes to large workings. And Bobby says 101 degrees. I think they are not true. Mainstream media plays with us. Nope, it's true. And that was off the coast of Florida. The ocean temperature at one of the buoys was 101.1 degrees. And when the wind shear stops coming from Egypt and all the dust settles from the sandstorm from Saudi Arabia, and the normal patterns reassert themselves, the set of hurricanes we're likely to have are going to be huge. This is like unprecedented. It's global change, climate change, and it's not trying to mess with us. It's trying to wake us up, because this is bad, and we are going to go extinct.
It's not trying to do anything. The planet is trying to survive, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, we need to get going because we are coming out of time here. Bobby says, what state are you in? I'm in Oregon. And Julia says, very insightful and validates much of my own thoughts on the matter. Thank you both. You're welcome. And Beth says, I taught yoga, meditation, belly dance, was a massage therapist, Reiki master, etc. I'm so happy to be retired. It was beautiful, but I'm happy to just rest. Me too, and I was all those things. I taught yoga and meditation, and was a belly dancer, and was a massage therapist, and still am doing a few people, and a Reiki master. So, hi! We're soul sisters, or whatever. All right, so we've come to the end of our show. This has been lively and wonderful, and I've thoroughly enjoyed myself, and thank you for the distraction and all the questions. And if you need to talk to me or whatever, you can send me an email at shifrasmagicalcove@gmail.com, or you can friend me on Facebook, and we can, whatever. Joy says, me too. Yeah, I thought there was another one of us. Beth says, I feel you, soul sister. And Julia says, hugs and blessings to all those who want them. Thank you all. All right, guys. It's been a wonderful time. So, Fifth-born daughter says, thank you for doing this. You're welcome. And hails to you, Siofra and crew. Alrighty then. See you next week.
Bye.